left, right.
Yo, thank you for joining in this episode. This is an interesting episode where we talk about the nutrition in food and why the food in the United States is less nutritious than it was decades ago. I have my friend Chef Bruno, who has a lot of food certifications. I don't know which one specifically, but he's got a lot of them, and I know that he is certified to write the nutrition facts on the back of food labels. So he really knows what's in food. He's also a chef, so he knows how to put food together to taste good without it being packed with preservatives and all these additives. We're going to hear his perspective. You'll hear James' perspective and my perspective, and I'm curious your perspective. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. If this is a platform where you cannot comment, shoot me a DM. I'd love your opinion. I'll see you guys on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 All right, that long pour means we are live. Welcome to Sip Talk, episode 196. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined as always by James, the Bartender Boswell, out of Charleston, South Carolina. James is a philosopher, a professional referee, a bartender, and most exciting of all, an accountant. And today we have a special guest, second time podcast co-host, celebrity Chef Bruno from Philadelphia is joining us. And today we're talking about nutrition and what's happening to the food in the United States. Specifically, what's happened over the last 100, 150 years and the issue that we have with food today. James is making a last-minute run, probably to the bathroom. Well, he's doing that. This is Sip Talk. So Bruno and I are going to open up, not open, it's already open. We're going to reopen this like Glenlivet 12-year-old double oak cask. And we got just a little bit of this because we are going to make a nice pizza pie after this podcast. And I'm told that Bruno's going to coach me in making this pizza. So the wait's on my
Real quick.
Pizza.
Deep dish pizza. Is it pizza?
Chicago style pizza, yeah?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Bruno?
About what?
Chicago style pizza, the deep.
That's not pizza. That's something. I don't know exactly how to try to.
It's a casserole.
Huh?
It's a casserole.
You still got to speak up. I know we got a new mic, but you got to speak up a little bit.
I don't know if to consider it pizza. Is more. I don't know. It's a baked something, but they don't have a name for it.
James is calling it a casserole.
I'm saying it's a casserole.
Yeah, it's a casserole. Let's put a casserole. That fixes it.
Well, for anybody who's seen my Instagram, I took some pictures and posted them recently. Bruno made these nice pan-style pizzas, and they were phenomenal, except the one that he cooked in my baking tray didn't cook enough on the bottom. So Bruno brought tonight some very thin baking pans so that pizza on the bottom cooks really nicely. Very excited for this after the podcast. But Bruno's got a special way of making pizza. He thinks it's the best. I'd have a hard time disagreeing with him. But when Bruno cooks, he's always talking about the nutritional facts, nutritional breakdown of the food. And I think a lot of people don't understand nutrition at the level that Bruno does. I think I understand it pretty well. I hung out with Bruno quite a bit. But I think it's important to talk about what's happening with food, why we have this obesity epidemic. What else? What am I missing?
Besides the obesity part, it's also all the health problem. I mean, you start to have 20 years old that they start to have strokes, and you start to have teenager or toddlers that they have lots of allergies and lots of even diabetes at this point. I mean, 20 years ago, there was no money in diabetes. today is lots of money in diabetes because insulin it costs an arm and a leg. So many times I start wondering if actually those food manufacturers are invested in those pharma companies to keep the business running with all those food like that. That might be a little far-fetched, but anyway.
You have the correlatory data that might suggest that. No?
Yeah, no, clearly the data is out there. The problem.
Real quick, we should say hi to Maria.
All right. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Well, one thing about nutrition that I think is problematic is there's a lot of conflicting data out there, and it feels like the advisories in terms of eat this, don't eat that, change constantly, where one decade it'll be like a high protein diet is good, another decade it'll be a high protein diet is bad, and one decade it's carbs are good for you but just don't have like the simple carbs like sugars. Other decades it'll be like carbs are always bad for you, don't eat carbs at all. And so people get confused in terms of what should I eat and what shouldn't I eat, and how do I know that what I'm hearing now isn't just going to be contradicted in 5 or 10 years when some new study comes out and it turns out that I was eating all these eggs, and then the study comes out and says eating eggs will kill you.
Well, the problem is, in fact, is that one. Is the fact that there are so many conflicting pieces of information, and the internet made it even easier to get all these influencers, so to speak, that they are paid by those large corporations to push certain things and know some other things. So if you talk with the guy with the olive oil, he tells you that the olive oil is great. Then you talk with the other guy with the avocado oil, and he tells you that the avocado oil is great. And I remember when canola oil, it was fantastic and it was also cheap. But then at the end of the story, what's it coming down to is that each one, he pushed the wrong product. So it's really a matter of marketing with a painting of research. Most of research and the studies, they cannot be duplicated. And that's where my, so to speak, problem it comes down to. And try to explain to people about the nutrition. And I had to explain it to myself because up to, I want to say 20 years ago, to me, food was food. You eat it and gone. And then I had to start to pay attention on all those other problems, so to speak.
Well, let's back up.
Raj asked the question real quick. He says, "What about palm oil?" And he says, "People are boycotting Nutella because it contains palm oil." And I don't know anything about the nutrition of palm oil, but I do know that the reason why palm oil is problematic, irrespective of its nutrition, is that harvesting palm oil is disastrous for the environment. Like if you look at palm oil farms, it's all slash and burn, and it just leaves this scarred wasteland behind on what was kind of lush tropical vegetation. So it's that it's not being grown and produced responsibly, and it's destroying environments. I have no idea about the nutrition, but I've seen videos of palm oil farms and what they look like afterwards, and it's terrible.
Hang on, I want to just pause and kind of circle back to a couple of things that were said. So we're talking about nutrition, right? And I want to get into kind of why humans consume food, and what.
Do you really need to answer that question?
Well, I think it's a good starting point, a good premise to understand kind of then what different foods are doing to you. But one, you said the thing about eggs, and I'll tell you, eggs have gotten a lot of flack over the last decade and a half because of cholesterol. But I'll tell you one thing: point to a person who eats a couple of eggs a day. That's probably one of the healthiest people you're going to know. That's a
really poor reference because you've got a huge selection bias there, because chances are the person that you're talking about is someone that is heavy into fitness. So I could very easily point to other people that eat tons of eggs and are in terrible shape. So
if they're eating their eggs on a McMuffin, that's one thing. But if somebody's going to go out of their way in the morning, scramble or slide some eggs over easy, 3 or 4 eggs, get on with the day, that's going to be a healthier person, regardless.
Right. So it's not the eggs.
And that's my point.
Plenty of other things.
That's my point. It's how we're eating, and you can get held up in the nutrition all day long, but it's your lifestyle and it's how you're eating. So I just want to get back to why we eat. We eat because we need
hold on.
energy.
Let's just define something really quick. Like, there are two components to weight loss.
But we're not talking specifically about weight loss. I think if you
but like there are two components to health, or whatever weight you end up at, and if you want to lose weight, then weight loss. And the two components are going to be diet and exercise. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter how well you do one of the two. If you do the other half really poorly, you're not going to have good outcomes.
I think very, very, very clearly put. The thing about diet, and then I'm going to let Bruno lead, because Bruno and I were talking prior to us going on air. I'm like, dude, you got to stop talking. You're going to get all these ideas out, and you're going to forget to deliver them once we're live. But the reason we eat and what it does for us is really twofold. One, we eat to consume calories because we need that for energy. In addition to
calorie. Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Calorie is just a reference point. It's how you calculate energy. It's like when you go to the pump to buy gasoline, you got 87 octane or whatever, the octane. So calorie, it's actually to me, it's the wrong item to look at. Calorie, you can get calorie from eating a carrot, or you can get calorie from eating a strip of bacon.
So I got you. So basically what you're saying is a calorie to food is like a gallon is to fuel.
It's like a bulk to electricity.
Because some fuel in the food sense will get you further.
Yeah,
so some calories will get you further.
Let me put a better definition.
Kind of calorie, what you're looking at is proteins. Really, it's what's the good in that food. I mean, the calories, you're going to get calorie regardless if you eat.
Yeah, but just look at calories are a measure of energy density in food, and 1 calorie is going to be the amount of work that's required to raise water by a certain amount of temperature. And so the more calories, the more energy that food contains. And you can have higher density calories, or so you can have something like butter, where you might only need to have a couple ounces to have 500 calories, or you might need to have a couple pounds of lettuce to have 500 calories.
But it's not the calorie, the fuel. The fuel is the protein, the carbs, and the fat, actually. So the calorie is the combination of those three items that it gives you how many calories you have. But if you just get the calorie, let's say, from proteins, you will end up having a state of ketosis that increase the acidity of the blood. If you get just carbs, you get, you need to balance those three things to get those 100 calories, so to speak. I just take 100 calories as a reference point. So the calorie in itself, it doesn't really matter. What's matter is where you get it from, where those calories come from, pretty much.
Calories matter in that if you have, you're correct in saying that you need to have a mix between the three major types of calories of protein, carbs, and fat. But at the end of the day, what determines whether you gain or lose weight is going to be the total number of calories that you consume
versus how many you burn.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, many people, let's say in those poor areas, that they are they only have the ability to eat fast food. You still have the same amount of calorie if you eat a wholesome egg or Big Mac. Now, I don't know exactly how many calories each one has, but I want to say if you eat 100 calories of good food or 100 calories of processed food, the 100 calories from the good food, it gets you further.
So the reason for that is that processed food tends to be more calorie dense. So you might be getting
the same amount of calorie. I want to just
right. No, but what I'm saying, let me finish this thought.
Please.
So processed food tends to be more calorie dense. So to get to 100 calories of processed food might only be 2 or 3 ounces of actual food, whereas unprocessed food, you might be eating 6 or 7 ounces. So you're going to get full faster eating less processed food. And so in order to get full on unprocessed food, you might eat 1,000 calories. Whereas if
That's
you're
pretty
eating
much
processed
what
food,
about that,
the
yes.
same volume of food might be 2,000 calories.
So,
And so that's the
here-
problem with fast food and processed foods, is that in order to get full, you're eating more calories because it's more calorically dense.
all right. So the 2 points I wanted to make 40 minutes ago was that there's 2 aspects. All right. We consume food for energy, so calories. And to get the second point of my second half of the first sentence I was going to say was calories and then nutrition and the nutrients and the minerals that come along with the food. And that, we can include fiber in that as well, and what these things do for our body. So talking about how food has changed over the last 100 years, James, I sent you this video earlier that we watched about how 100 years ago we didn't even really have supermarkets, not the way that we do today. Food preservation was very different. So we were eating locally sourced food because food couldn't travel the distance because it just didn't last. It didn't have preservatives and chemicals.
Yeah, with very few exceptions, because wheat flour and stuff would still be able to be transported relatively easily. But any fresh foods 100 years ago, like any meats or vegetables, like those couldn't travel very far because transportation, like refrigeration, didn't really exist, and the transportation methods were super slow. So the food could only travel for like a day or two before it went bad, and you couldn't travel very far in a day or two.
So also on the wheat aspect, and Bruno talks about this a lot. Bruno's obviously Italian. He likes pasta. Pasta comes from flour, and there's different types of flour. And, way back then, the wheat was not the same wheat that we have today. The preparation of the wheat was not the same. So should we start talking about chicken, or should we?
I want to know about the differences between wheat.
It's all the same situation way, because the industrialization of food, what's happening is as the population grow, there was more demand, and everybody was looking for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So by asking for cheaper, the manufacturer, they provide cheaper items, and by doing it cheaper, they took out the quality stuff. So pretty much is for the same amount of calories that you had 100 years ago, and today you had more energy generating nutrients with the 100 calorie 100 years ago than you have it today. So if you eat a breakfast for 100 calories of wholesome food, you go up to, let's say, 12 o'clock, you don't feel hungry. If you add 100 calorie with a low energy food, at 10 o'clock, you need to eat again. So because the energy is, the little bit of energy that was there, you used it already. The point is you didn't have the time to burn those 100 calories that you had. So by need to eat again at 10 o'clock, it means that in order for the person that eat a nutritionally poor food, you need twice as many calories to reach 12 o'clock.
So tell me about how wheat worked, say, 50 years ago, or maybe 80 years ago.
But the wheat, the point is like, it wasn't refined. That's pretty much what's coming down to. So they did take this kernel and they just took them out, the outer part that is a little tougher, and they fed to the cow, the pigs, and so it was fed to the animals. And the rest, it was actually ground, that there are 3 parts inside. Once that you had a pasta fagioli, like I said, you made the reference to the Italian, a pasta fagioli, it was actually a very good balanced meal if it's done the way it was supposed to be done, because you had the fat, the veg, and the carbs, and there was wholesome thing. So somebody that had a bowl of pasta fagioli, he could go to the field and work 7-8 hours. Today, if you have a pasta fagioli, you just smile and you need to eat something else. Pretty much. That's the bad
I
thing.
want to address a comment from Drunk, and he says, so basically they cut the product so much that it became trash.
Pretty much so, yes.
Truth to that, where in order to make food cheaper, they had to find ways to make it so that the food would last longer, because food spoilage is going to be one of the biggest costs in food manufacturing and grocery sales. And so if you can take something that's going to spoil in 2 or 3 days, or make that last 2 or 3 weeks, or you can can it to last longer, well, the more refined you make it, the more processing you add to it, the more preservatives you add, like, the worse the product is going to be. But you can also make it cheaper because less of it's going to spoil. So you don't have to build in that cost for the spoilage.
That's not necessary, though, because, example, take bacon. Bacon was an early form of preserving meat. Pretty much today, we don't really need to preserve bacon anymore because we have the refrigerators and all these other tools to preserve meat. But pretty much the bacon was created to preserve this slab of meat, like the prosciutto, like the smoked salmons, like those that now they become delicacies. But at the time, 200, 300, 400, 1,000 years ago, the only way to preserve food was salt, air, and salt and air, actually. Or you hang it to dry, or you put it under the salt to dry. And that's how they preserve things. Or under honey, actually. Honey is a very good preservative as well. So it wasn't necessarily the preservative to preserve the food. Come back to Italia. The prosciutto, it wasn't made because it was a wealthy person food. The prosciutto was made because they killed this pig in February, and then they needed to work all summer long in the fields, so they needed something that it was ready to eat, and they didn't need to cook it in summertime. So they created those things: the salami, the sausages, the prosciutto, all those dry cured meats. It was for that need. It wasn't to sell it to some rich guy. So the problem of the processing of today is really a matter of squeezing the most out of the pig, so to speak. With in Chicago, the armor,
Well, check
the stockyards.
check this comment, because I want you to talk about the chicken. I want you to talk about Costco.
I want me to talk
So
about
Larry's got a comment here. He said, "Food today is horrible, processed, hormone-injected animals that affect the human body in the worst ways possible."
Yes.
So-
Well, with Justin, there is one thing that to me bothers me a little bit for quite a while now, and then I had to go to the bottom of this thing. And they are the rotisserie chickens. The person that came to my face more often is Costco's chicken. I was involved with the USDA back in the 90s, and I was telling Justin today that back in the late 90s, Jack in the Box and burger food, fast food in the West Coast had a salmonella outbreak, and they killed quite a few people. So the USDA passed a law that they needed to inject the meat and all the prepared food with a solution of 3% salt, 3% by weight. So if you had a pound, you need to have a 3% of that in this saline solution to kill the bacteria. And so that they would, it was a preventive way to kill those bacteria for the food that it was shipped out. Then once that I started to learn that, I also started to learn that there were fast food companies like Kentucky Fried Chicken, example, that they grow their chickens to about a pound and 3/4. And that because the ratio between bones, skins, and meat is optimal to cut it, bread it, and then it look like a whole chicken. Come back to the rotisserie. I started to look at how much thing they were putting inside there. I stumbled on a video, and this lady, she was talking about I think he was one of those influencers that he actually was paid by Costco to talk about their product. And she was talking nonchalantly about how many things there were inside there. And most of those items, they were to retain water so that the thing it didn't dry out, pretty much. At that point, putting together the fact that they were supposed to inject it with a saline solution and so on, I figured that Costco's most likely put about 30% added water in their chicken. So if they sell you a 3-pound chicken, they actually have a 2-pound chicken. That's what you buy. So you buy 2-pound chicken and 1 pound of injected solution.
So
A further proof, excuse me 1 second. A further proof of this thing, I got it from the nutritional information. If you look at the at Costco's nutritional information in the proteins, knowing the calories and so on, for a 3-ounce portions serving, they have about 17 to 20 grams of proteins in the rotisserie chicken. When everyone else has 27, 30, up to 50 grams of protein for a 3 to 3.5 ounces serving. So that to me said that pretty much is they have less proteins because it's water.
More water.
And water, it doesn't have proteins. So it just has this, it's a filler pretty much. So those are the problems that most of the food,
So explain.
today food.
Explain. You said they're pumping it with this saline solution, which is some type of basically a salt water.
It's a salt water, yeah. It actually is natural because once that the food is once that the enzyme they start to break down and the meat is start to lose water weight, there is a little bit of slime that it produces on the skin or on the meat that is not going bad. Yeah, you just can feel it. And that is, they call it potassium lactate. That is a form of salt that it comes to the surface because there is less water on the surface of the meat. And that's pretty much what they increase. They are increasing the salinity in order that, like forever, salty kills bacteria anyway. So the point is, once that they kill bacteria, they realize that piece of chicken breast, so to speak, it would absorb much more water than just the 3%. There was an issue with that also with the scallops. The scallops at one point, the scallop is a sponge, very expensive, that if you put in the water, those things, they double the size.
Okay.
So pretty much they used to do the same thing, put the scallops in the water for a day or two, and then sell it for a next size up. There was a big lawsuit and that they stopped it.
But back to salmonella. Explain what salmonella is and how it happens. Because I didn't realize that this is really where salmonella comes from.
Salmonella is a bacteria that is present in chicken. Over 90% of the chicken have salmonella. And in the case of the Jack in the Box with the beef, is mostly E. coli that is a fecal contamination. So by increasing the salt into those meats in the prepared food, they try to prevent salmonella poisoning or E. coli poisoning.
Right, so the reason why they're injecting the saline solution in there is to inhibit if there's a contamination of either E. coli or salmonella, the injection of this saline solution is going to inhibit the growth. It's not going to necessarily kill it, but it's going to make it a lot harder for it to spread.
The only thing that you inhibit the growth is through temperature. The growth of the bacteria is actually you stop it at 0 or you stop at boiling point. And they grow the most between 70 degrees and 140. Between 70 degrees and 140, they actually double every 20 minutes or something like that. But the salt, he actually killed it. He kills it outright.
That's why we preserve for hundreds of years at least.
Yeah,
yeah.
The pancetta.
We got a bunch of comments we need to hit.
You want to read them because we're kind of blocked with our camera set up here.
Okay. All right. So, um, Alina says, "What about the aspect of pleasure, not just energy and nutrition?" I think that's really important. I want to get to that. And then we've got Larry saying, "Today a chicken breast is the size of a small turkey breast, and a chicken wing is the size of a normal chicken drumstick." And he's also saying, like, I think this is in relation to the amount of hormones that are in a lot of the meats that are in processed foods. Is like, have you noticed all the breasts that men are growing? um, so I think I want to really quickly comment about the idea of like pleasure and not just energy and nutrition. And that's a tough balance to strike because eating like a 100% perfectly nutritious and extremely healthy diet can at times be tough to
Detrimental?
maintain
Oh, okay.
because some of
I
those
think
foods just aren't as tasty. And so, yeah, there are some people that are just like, you know what, it's not worth going through eating food that doesn't taste good for what they determine to be marginal gains. And so that's why companies, like, among many other reasons, that's why companies like McDonald's stay in business, is because their food evolutionarily, we evolved to want to, like, when we were in hunter gatherers, like we evolved
We wanted
to eat.
caloric density.
Yeah, because we didn't know when the next meal was going to be. So if you were going to eat, you wanted to eat the stuff that had the most calories in it to last you as long as possible, because you might not be eating for another week. So like things that were really sweet, sweetness meant that there was a lot of sugar in there, lots of calories. Things that were really fatty meant that there was a lot of calories. So that's why like sweet and fatty foods, and bacon is a perfect example because it's both sweet and fatty. Like that's why people
today
love
is sweet.
bacon. Is
Today is
it,
sweet and fatty.
hmm?
Today is sweet and fatty because pretty much when it coming down, excuse me if I jumped in, when it comes down to flavors and nutrition, like you say, it's the fact that the food and the flavors, they are two different industries in today's
Yeah.
world. It's the food is one thing, and then the flavors, you have factory that they just deal with that. They deal that the majority of the producer of commercial food, they use three ingredients. They use cheap flours, some kind of fat that generally is Crisco, then they use spices and sugar.
Yeah,
And that is flavorings. So if you take Dunkin' Donuts, use those three ingredients, and then they shoot some kind of sweet thingy inside or outside or whatever it is. You take McDonald's, it pretty much do the same thing, and then they put a patty or of meat that it can be pink slime or not.
I think what James is saying though is that just evolutionarily,
I don't know if it's evolutionary though. That's
no, it very much is.
But I think
like,
well, there's two factors. One, human for the need of survival want to pursue sweet and very powerfully flavorful foods because they have the most calories.
No, hold on a second, Justin. That thing, my grandfather, let's forget about going too much back in the ages. You know what I'm saying? I want to talk about my grandfather.
No, I'm looking to trace the reason why people seek out these unhealthy foods today is that
because we are
deeply biologically ingrained in us.
Well, so twofold though. So yeah, we are driven for caloric density, but then also, and I think this is where Bruno's going with this, you do have the marketing aspect where it's marketed to us, whether it's for pleasure or for the sense of family. You know, like we're marketed the idea of Thanksgiving. You know, there's it's multifaceted why we are driven.
You see, I was born in a regular family, and I grew up for many years. I used to eat maybe 10 items. My mother, she was, although Italian, she didn't cook a storm. She was really a basic cook. Okay. Then one day I ended up working in the food service, and I started to be exposed to so many things. The point is that the people that buy, here you come back to Costco's for no particular reason, okay, just because it's in the conversation. The people that buy this chicken at Costco's and is used to that chicken, that's the flavor that they know. That's it. So they cannot. That's to them is their flavor of the chicken. They cannot compare to a regular chicken how it tastes like or how it tastes like. The only thing that they can see is that that's the chicken to them, and it's $4.99. So if you tell them that they need to buy a chicken at $7.99, says, "Oh, that's too expensive." But too expensive on the basis of what? It's too expensive on the basis of the other one is $4.99, but the other one they don't have really a comparison to make. It's just an assumption, and that's what's the marketing of this huge food industry today. That's what she keep bombarding us with all these bits and pieces of information that a normal person it doesn't know anymore who to listen to. I didn't want to listen to anymore.
So tell me about the health conscious who want that rotisserie chicken, because we know, of course, it's not fried, it's rotisserie, so it's clearly very healthy.
It started that way.
It's less unhealthy than fried chicken because you don't have it's not cooked in oil, so you don't have the calories from the oil soaking into the meat.
But you do have the fat dripping from the other chickens onto your chicken.
Yeah, but
you see that, and again, I find myself that over the years I was in the food service for all my life. So my specialty is cost control and menu engineering. So I needed to make menus, keeping an eye on the cost and keeping an eye on creating the most meals with the fewest ingredients, the most recipe with the fewest ingredients. At this point, I start to realize quite a few years ago, actually, that if you go to the supermarket, you do have the ability to buy, I don't want to say organic or super organic or that kind of thing, but you have the ability to buy fresh food, fresh beef, fresh pork, fresh chicken, fresh vegetables. There is a pattern in the supermarket that every 6 weeks, that items, a certain cut of beef, it goes on sale. And it's regular. It's not that you can almost bet on it. Even now that there is these inflations and the prices they are raising, increasing, and so on, I can still see that every 4 weeks you can buy a top round for $1.99 to $2.99 a pound. And that's a very lean piece of beef, USDA choice. So, and I just pick him up one item. You know what I mean? You got the tomato, you got fruit that is, you always have one fruit or two type of fruit, about 99 cents a pound to $1.30 a pound, $1.50 a pound. So,
Bruno, can I interrupt you with something? Because you're making a really good point, but I think what you're missing is that while it is possible to cook healthy meals without having to spend a ton of money, the problem for a lot of people is one or both of these factors. One, cooking a good, healthy meal with fresh ingredients is time consuming. The second is not everybody has half or 1/10 of your skill when it comes to cooking. And so you might have people go to a grocery store and see that there's good deals on these fresh things, but they don't know how to prepare them.
Yeah, no, I understand that clearly. I mean, if I hadn't had my background, so to speak, in the cooking and the pricing and so on, I wouldn't have been able to see those things. And even, I don't know, sometimes I see the big pork loin $1. I saw as from as little as $1.25 a pound. And normally I would refrain to buy it because, again, it's a 7-8 pound thing. But then when you look at and you cut it in a few chunks, you can put in the freezer, froze in portions, and you can actually take the thing that it takes about 5 minutes to defrost and 5 minutes to cook. And I understand that many people have those type of constraints, the fact of the timing and the skills. But the bottom line is that we are so bombarded with that other type of convenience that is generated by large corporations that we are not don't have enough information on take advantage of those type of opportunities that they are there.
Let me
They are
ask you
there
this.
not because they are organic or whatever. They are there because the market depends on it. Because a
I want
cow,
to I want to take a survey of both the three of us and also our viewers in terms of how many have you ever gone to get fast food because it was faster than preparing a meal for yourself. I'm guilty of it. I've done it all the time where I don't want to take the time to prepare something. So instead, I'll drive to McDonald's and get something because I can have it in 5 minutes instead of having to spend 45 minutes or an hour putting a meal together.
I think that's also part of Bruno's message. And, obviously you talk about the general public, Bruno's trying to have an effect on those that are willing to listen and that have listened to him about how easy it is to cook and how much healthier and cheaper it is to cook if you're doing things the right way. So, for example, you buy natural ingredients, vegetables, you don't buy the pre-cut ones, right? You buy the actual vegetables. You buy the meat, you don't buy the pre-cooked meat.
Right.
And again, the point is like that. There is this fact that to cook it take a long time, and most of those cooking shows, it seems like that those people they put 10,000 things on the way. I mean, they got, I don't know, 15 ingredients. Half of them you don't even know what they look like. And then you got pots and pans, little dishes and little whiskey and this and all those things. To make a good meal, you really need a skillet and a couple of spices. You don't really need that much. The point is, like I said, there is very little information on that. There is very little information on how to take the 4-pound top round that it costs you $8 and that gives you like 16 meals, and you can get a burger, a half a pound burger for 70 cents, or a steak or whatever. I don't know, fajitas, those kind of things for 70 cents. There is not enough information on that part. And that's what I think that all those people that talk about health and so on, they should talk about it. They should put this information out there. How to take a chicken and actually when it's a 99 cents a pound and you break down and you have 4 portions and then, I don't know, 2 you freeze it and 2 you cook it. And it doesn't take long. To cook a portion of chicken, it takes you 20 minutes. I mean, by the time you go to McDonald's and back,
So
probably taking more than 20 minutes.
A lot of our food now is a direct. We had the Industrial Revolution in the 50s, right? 50s and 60s. I would say before then, people bought a lot of fresh food and cooked it, and less freezing because refrigerators weren't as efficient, and people didn't have as many freezers. So there's a lot more fresh food. And probably a lot more salt. But we had the Industrial Revolution, and now we are being fed food prepared by corporations where they want to get the highest dollar amount, and they want us eating as much of it as possible, and they want us cooking as little as possible because the fast food industry and the restaurants want us using them as often as possible. But what's holding us back from cooking? Because I don't really think.
Well, I think I've answered that, which is that the biggest appeal of fast food and pre-prepared meals is the convenience of, if you go to a McDonald's, you know what you're going to get and you know it's going to be quick. And you know that, like.
So on that note, Bruno is incredible at making pizza, right? And Bruno, after this podcast, we're gonna go make a couple of pies, and those will be done faster than if we end this podcast, went to Domino's.com on the computer or on the app, and then we ordered a Domino's pizza and we waited a half hour, 40 minutes for it to get here. We're going to go upstairs and we'll have a pizza in 15 minutes, you think? 20 minutes?
Yeah. Probably it coming down to me. Over the years, I have this knack of simplifying the steps. I take something and I always try to figure out the way how to make it easier. So even this pizza example that we're talking about, it takes me about 5 minutes to mix the dough, and I usually can do it in the morning and throw them up in the refrigerator. and it can stay there for a couple of days. To actually cook the pizza, by the time you turn the oven on to reach the temperature of 550 generally, you can stretch the pizza in a tray and put some topping on it, and the whole thing is cooked in 15 minutes at the most. So the problem is that once that you go look at the recipe for a pizza, they make such a big deal that it seems almost like you need to spend half a day just to slap around a little bit of flour and eggs. What is it? Flour and tomato, that type of thing. So again, I think that we are bombarded. We are bombarded with advertising and with influencers that take us more towards the convenience part than that. Then that's the only thing that they think that they sell is the convenience. Because when you think about it, when you think about the McDonald's part, is you got so much negativity on it that you really don't. You would having the opportunity, you don't want to eat that meals because that meals is going to kick your butt down the road. You're going to pay the consequences of the high salt. I mean, I never care about the sodium. And I thank God, even though I gained lots of weight in the last several years, I never had problems with heart or diabetes or that kind of thing. But I see some of those recipes from, I told you about the restaurants we were driving by a few days ago. Those people that have dishes that they have 2,000 milligrams of salt. One dish. I mean, you go there, you eat one meal, probably have an appetizer before that, drink, and maybe a dessert. And just with that dish, you have almost the full amount of salt that you needed for the day. Now, those things, they just lead to heart disease. I think that those executives that they put the menu together over there, they must be heavily invested in heart disease medication.
But
Well, salt is an easy way to make food taste better without having to improve your processes.
But look,
I don't
so
know,
you're talking about health implications of food, and you say you gained some weight over the last several years or something, but that's you at your age. You now have teenagers and even younger who have diabetes, who have heart problems,
but Kelly, that's what's
and we're not doing anything about it, right? We're marketing lousy food to them. We're marketing them chips and frozen foods. There's nobody marketing to kids how to eat fresh and healthy food except Michelle Obama throwing broccoli at people, and that's not going to go that far.
That seems like that's some kind of disgusting thing because that's
Michelle Obama saying broccoli is good because it makes me happy isn't a great campaign to get kids to eat broccoli. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about, and James, you and I have mentioned this on the podcast about how prison food oftentimes can be more appetizing and healthier than school lunches.
Well, part of that is because in prisons, the preparation of the meals is done by the prisoners themselves. And so the people that are cooking the meals have an interest in making good food because they're going to be eating it.
Where? Sorry, I missed something.
We're talking about prison food versus
prison
school
food. No, prison food prison food is federally regulated, and pretty much is if you get.
So is school food.
Excuse me.
So is school food.
School food also.
Yeah, school food also, and actually California it started to pass a little bit better regulation for what's concerned school food. With inmate food, there was a higher risk of diabetes and so on. And those people, they are primarily fed soy products for as a protein content to meet the federal guidelines. So is soy and flavoring pretty much. I think they have a very, very poor diet. And there was a point in my life that since I have USDA certificates and licensing, there was a point that I worked with the Department of Correction in Connecticut for about 6 months. And there was, I had a direct experience on this thing. That food is terrible, honestly. There's no.
Well,
the federal guidelines is to keep you alive. It's not to keep you healthy. Once that you look at the federal guidelines, and they say you need to have X amount of X, Y, Z, that is the minimum requirement, the minimum that your body requires to function.
But let me ask a question. So we're giving people food that's not making them healthier. It's not making them thinner or more fit. And we can, we don't have to draw a parallel with being thin and being fit. But we have kids that are much more obese than they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the 65th percentile now, we have kids that are obese. And not only are we not doing anything to change it, we're almost celebrating, people being larger.
Let's before we get into the whole like fat acceptance movement.
But my point, go ahead.
Like when it comes to why are kids fatter today than they were 50 years ago? Like obviously the quality of food that we're giving to our children today in aggregate is worse. But I also think that for a variety of cultural reasons, kids are a lot less active today than they used to be.
Fine. But my point is we're accepting of it. We're accepting of kids having diabetes, kids having asthma problems, kids being out of shape, kids spending all day in front of the computer or their iPad or the TV or their phone. And we're just cutting the cloth for larger sizes now when it comes to clothes. We're putting much larger people on billboards and saying this is the face and the body figure of healthy. We just kind of keep moving the mark here. And
that's the question, though.
Yeah, and obviously it's on the court. But at what point does the pushback come back? Because I walked by, a couple of years ago, probably on the podcast, I said, "Hey, I walked by this retail store, and I've never seen fat mannequins. All the mannequins are fat. Why do they have these funny shaped mannequins?" And I get it. They're marketing, they're marketing to this person, that person. James, we talked earlier in the week about, and I think we might have even said this on the podcast, but I sent you a Bill Maher clip, or we talked about this Bill Maher clip. He mentioned Adele. I remember thinking when Adele lost all this weight, how people were harassing her for losing weight. Why is the culture so accepting of this? And there's no pushback on people gaining weight, people being unhealthy.
There is pushback. First of all, I don't know too much about Adele. I never really cared about her or her music. But I think people focused on her more because of stances that she took early in her career about trying to promote, like, accepting people that are larger weight, and also talking about how she wanted to be known for her music and not her physical attractiveness. And so then when she lost weight to make herself generally more attractive, people are like, well, what is it about, like what you said earlier in your career? I liked you because you were taking a stance for people like me, and now you're not people like me, so I can't identify with you. So I don't think it's so much people crapping on her losing weight than it is saying, I used to identify with something that you represented, and you no longer represent that to me now.
I just want to put something inside there. To me, the food corporations, and I'm talking about, the food corporation, they are playing the same game of the opioids, the opioids in the 90s and the 2000s, the tobacco industries, those kind of things. I think that there is so much money involved in all this cheap food that they're putting out there. And then putting all this smoke screen telling people, oh, I am losing money, I'm giving you a cheap chicken at $4.99. And I broke down the numbers, and I think they are making money actually on that chicken anyway. So, but the bottom line is, I don't think that there is a care for the people in general. There is not. In fact, in 1958, they passed a law, a law that and they call it the GRAS, GRAS. That means generally recognized as safe, and it's a list of products that manufacturers they can use to flavor their product, to enhance it, to do whatever.
Generally recognized as safe.
Well,
Generally recognized as safe.
industry of
Hold on a second. Those things we buy every day in the supermarket. If I ask you to come to my house or for a dinner with me, and I offer you a generally recognized as safe dish, you most likely look at me like if I am crazy. But pretty much since 1958, we are eating a lot of generally recognized as safe ingredients that they are coming to us from all those mega corporations that they are making millions and millions and millions. And today they just keep increasing those health problems. And so pretty much it's almost like it become a huge business, and we are just the numbers. We are I don't even know if you are the guinea pig. We are past the guinea pig. We are
But I'll give you that the food that we're being served is a lot like the cigarettes we were being served for the last 60 years. But we saw over time what cigarettes were doing to people. And they originally marketed cigarettes like the pregnant woman's cigarette, or the athlete's cigarette, or the doctor's cigarette.
Doctors prefer
Yeah.
Chesterfields or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. And we have a similar thing going on with food. I mean, you have Olympians that used to advertise McDonald's, right?
Yeah, all that kind of thing.
You know, athletes advertise.
Yes, and that Olympian probably ate McDonald's once a year.
Well, I mean, he could have ate it. He could have ate it for 8 meals a day. And,
actually, I remember McDonald's used to sponsor the Olympic villages.
Yeah, but the
Olympians what Olympians are actually that care about their performance are going to be eating McDonald's before running the marathon that day.
Olympians just need pure calories, so they'll consume 15,000 calories a day. If they can have a couple of Happy Meals and some Big Macs,
they're not doing that though.
Well, most of them aren't, because they want some sustained calories.
I follow a whole bunch of different sports pretty closely, and I watch some videos of some athletes talking about a day in their life when they're in training or whatever, and they talk about what they eat. And one of the guys was talking about how he cooks all of his own food, and how and in the Tour de France or whatever, the Tour de France teams, each team has their own nutrition team. So they've got the riders, but they've got all the support staff. Part of the support staff is solely dedicated to nutrition, where they've got chefs and nutritionists that are coming up with specialized meals for all of these athletes. And I can guarantee you that McDonald's is not on their menu.
Yeah, I mean,
even if they're doing 10,000, 15,000 calories a day, every single one of those calories and every gram of protein and all the other vitamins and stuff that are in there, those nutritionists know down to the gram how much each one of their athletes is taking in.
But my question is, we saw over time how cigarettes were killing us. It's very clear in the pant sizes of Americans, in the number of people with diabetes. It's very clear that the food that we're eating is killing us.
The problem, Justin, it doesn't happen right away. It happens over time. It's not like...
Well, cigarettes, it could take you 50 years to get lung cancer.
In fact, it's not like, the fire burns. So you put the finger in there, you burn yourself, and then you get the lessons, because it's very quick.
Eat McDonald's every day for 6 months, and you tell me.
Yeah, but it will take 6 months anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's no quick enough. You know what I'm saying? I all the way to again, I never realized that I was gaining so much weight. I thought I was eating a lot, but I never really realized how much I was eating. So I think a lot of people do what they do because it's not the effect. They are not as fast as.
I would say it's faster than what happens with cigarettes. But my question is still, you can see what Americans and a lot of other countries look like and what we're suffering from. When, is the food industry that much bigger than the tobacco industry?
Well, can I really quick talk about the culture of acceptance? Because I've got a quick story.
All right, you got 40 seconds.
I can do it in 40 seconds. When I lived in Spain, I would oftentimes play soccer on like street courts, and it would just be random people that would show up every night, and it would just be pickup games of soccer, and it was usually pretty friendly, and the skill level would vary, and almost all the people that played soccer were all quite thin and pretty athletic. And one night there was this one guy that showed up that was pretty heavy, and everybody on the court called him Gordo, which if you don't speak Spanish is fatty. So like the one guy, and like by American standards, he wasn't even super fat. He was just the fattest guy on the court. And so like that was just like, and nobody thought anything of it. It was just like, yeah, there's Gordo. And that's what they all called him. And so there was just kind of this subtle cultural acceptance that like if you're fat in Spain, you're going to be called out on it.
Well, we don't have that. We don't have that here, and we have overwhelming acceptance. We are out of time for this episode. I want to thank you guys for joining. We'll
got to thank
Raj
for feeding us the comments and warning us about legal potentials.
Yeah, I will address the legal issues before we publish. But I want to thank everybody, and it's pizza time.
Enjoy your pizza, guys.
See you. This is The Other End. Thank you for joining. If you like this episode, let us know. Please actually hit the like button. We'd appreciate that. And if there's more topics you want to hear about, we'd love to know. We're always looking for new topics. That's half the struggle with putting together these episodes. So I want to thank you for making it this far, and I hope to see you next time. Adios.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.